And also let everyone know, Zamboni has very graciously promised to answer every single question that comes through. So anything you pop in your chat, whether that's a private chat with someone else or actually just sending me a question that you want asked, it'll be in the meeting minutes that will then go to Zamboni to distribute and go through and make sure all those questions get answered. So just want to make sure of that, make sure everyone is aware of that. And with that, do want to thank Zamboni for taking the time today to come out and shed some light on everything we need to know about lithium-ion batteries. With that, Doug, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you very much, John. Welcome to NARCE Online. We'd like to thank the U.S. Ice Rink Association for organizing this event. We wish we could be with you all in Buffalo right now, but these are interesting times that we're having to live in, and we're glad that you all joined us today. During today's event, we're going to try our best to answer all the questions that you have using the chat feature. If we don't get to those, please note that you can reach out to your authorized distributor or any of our factories to get an answer that doesn't get reached today. I'd like to introduce the members of our sales team that are with us on this call today. From Brantford, Ontario, we've got Greg Dean, who's our VP of Sales and Brand Management, Marty Elliott, Sales Associate, Scott Douglas. From our team in Quebec, we have Charles Bercier, our staff engineer, Kelly McMillan, and our brand team, Paula, Rena, and Ben are here to help me out with visuals and any questions and problems that I might have. So welcome. I'm glad that you're all here. It's exciting. It's different. As a dinosaur of the industry, I'm learning new things, and I hope everybody's enjoying what's being offered up. The LI package was introduced in our 450 in 2018. It was tested out in the 552 based on how successful the 450 has been. That was done in 2019, and we started shipping machines early in 2020, just prior to the CV shutdown of a lot of ice rinks. We had some of our first LI battery packages out. We're going to talk about lithium-ion and start out with a quick update on the lithium-ion packages. The 450 was the very first LI battery package ice resurfacer. And I'm going to toss the ball over to Marty and Scott so that they can elaborate on the 450, its features, its operation, and how well it's been received. Marty, Scott, it's all yours.
Thanks, Doug. Yeah, welcome everyone to this Zoom meeting, the podcast on the both the 450 lithium-ion and the 552 AC lithium-ion. I'm going to speak briefly along with Scott, our sales associate, Scott Douglas. We're going to talk about the 450. It's manufactured in the Brantford, Ontario facility. As Doug indicated, we put the prototype in play in the spring of 2018 and started production on the machine for deliveries in the fall of 2019, actually 2018, I believe it was. And we've delivered in Ontario right now, Ontario, Canada. We have both Collingwood, Ontario and Aurelia, Ontario that have received both two each 450 lithium ions. And of course, we have other lithium ion 450 models across the country. The biggest difference, and Scott will be more specific and talk to this, with lithium-ion, if any of our viewers had an opportunity to work with a DC or an AC battery system, the biggest difference you're going to identify with the lithium-ion machine is there's zero maintenance involved with the machine. I know, Doug, you're going to speak more to that as well. The intent of the lithium-ion as well, outside of the battery maintenance or lack of, the ability to be able to produce what we call a carbon footprint or zero carbon footprint. This system produces zero gassing, both in the charge process or in the battery process. So in that aspect, we're producing a zero carbon footprint machine as an OEM manufacturer. Scott, why don't you add to this?
So yeah, so our Model 450 is available in 2 battery sizes. We have our standard battery pack, which is a it's an 8-cell battery, so you can get about 3 to 4 floods before you need to recharge. And you're probably hearing 3 to 4 floods, and you're thinking, well, what's the charge time? With lead acid, that could take a little while to get back up to a full battery. With lithium-ion, if you do a 10 to 15-minute flood, within 15 to 20 minutes, you're back up to 100% battery. It's about a 1.5 ratio from operation use and then to charge time to get back up to a full battery. For the traditional, there is some mix up when it comes to what will a facility do when it comes to ice maintenance or for taking their ice out. Just then by kind of putting into practice the ice maintenance, the cross-cutting and things like that, but we learn in the IMEO courses, it can really cut back on that.
Marty, Scott, if you could maybe expand a little bit about green and how people are viewing this. There's been a big push for green. How has the lithium-ion package in the 450 made it easier to get people to make that transition from a traditional fuel-powered machine into an electric?
Speaking, Doug, with municipalities, their energy efficiency departments, they've really taken the initiative and with open arms welcomed this brand new ice resurfacer. It's allowed them to be able to put their programs in place along with their other fleet service type of machines being transit and other lift trucks, things like that. So they certainly welcome it. And it's certainly walking the line, if you will, that they're trying to produce and I speak of in Ontario, the zero carbon footprint policy. That's a huge initiative, and I believe it's everywhere in North America now. So they've welcomed it with open arms, definitely.
That's great. Scott, do you want to add anything to that, what Marty said?
Yes, definitely. Even in the last few years of seeing bids and tenders come out, my first few years doing bids, I maybe saw 1 or 2 requests for electric machines. And now virtually every bid and tender we are filling out at least has a section that's requesting electric pricing or additional information. So in the province of Ontario, for example, it has been lagging behind in the terms of electric or adopting electric vehicles. In the last 2 years especially, it's gone up dramatically. And it seems to be that more and more electric vehicles and ice resurfacers, for this matter, are being purchased.
That's great. We're going to show another slide. Maybe, Scott, you can elaborate on the ease of connecting the batteries to the charger.
Yes, definitely. So plugging in and charging the Model 450 is virtually as simple as charging your cell phone. The only extra step that is involved is turning on the charger. And then when that battery is topped up, the charger will switch itself off. And then all you have to do from there is unplug the machine and you're ready to go do the resurface. We've done some lead acid machine deliveries in the past and battery training. We often like to have the battery manufacturer come to show the operators their best way to charge or do battery maintenance. With the lithium-ion batteries, it's virtually a 10 to 15-minute process. They're enclosed batteries. There's no watering involved, no gravity tests. Simply just plugging the machine into the charger, turning that charger on, and you're up and running just like a cell phone. However, the charger for the machine is a little bit smarter than your cell phone's charger, so it efficiently and intelligently charges the batteries individually.
It's one thing that I noticed when I was out doing an install of a machine in February, how much easier this connection is going into the battery pack and into the charger than a traditional lead acid battery pack. Marty, do you have anything that you'd like to add to this as far as connection, how easy things that the customer might be dealing with lithium-ion?
Yeah, with the audience, the customer base, the operators, in delivery of these machines, they certainly had an anticipation of expecting a lot more to be involved in the training process. But as Scott and you've alluded to, the training is, I mean, it's a 1-2 step process. You really can't mess it up. Even with the charging unit, and when you have the machine plugged in, there's a safety switch on it. You can't even turn the machine on. You can't even operate the machine. So operators out there that have worked with natural gas, CNG, compressed natural gas, sometimes they've come into a situation where they forget to unplug it and decide to drive off, and that can be catastrophic. With our lithium-ion machines, that can happen. So it's unoperational, and that's one of the safety features of the lithium-ion 450 and the 552.
The slide now that hopefully everybody can see is the inside of what used to be the engine compartment. Scott, maybe you could elaborate a little bit on this and touch a little bit about training and maintenance aspects of 450 in comparison to a fuel-powered machine.
Absolutely. So the 450 has virtually taken the learning curve of switching from fuel to an electric machine out of the equation. It's got a maintenance-free motor. It's got a maintenance-free battery. Just other than your grease points and your hydraulic fluid, it's pretty well the only things you need to be checking, and the conditioner, of course. So the Model 450 uses the exact same hydrostat as our Model 446, which is our fuel-powered version. It is virtually the same machine other than the batteries. It drives the same, it feels the same, the cut is the same. During our demonstrations, we had a few kind of questions whether the power would be there in an electric machine, and within a few minutes of just driving the machine on the ice, they began their cut and they got off the ice and said the only difference is that it's much, much quieter. They could hear the automatic snowbreaker going down and wondering if it was bogging, the machine was bogging down, but no, the machine cuts the same as a fuel-powered machine.
Yeah, that's one of the big things that we've heard from customers over the years when they've gone from a fuel-powered machine to an electric, is that they hear things that they maybe didn't hear before, or I can't believe how quiet it is. It's quite different. Marty, if I could ask, operationally, you've been out in the field with people with the 450. How are you finding that they're adapting to the machine? Is it something that they just hop right up on it and away they go, or is it something that it takes them a little bit of time to get used to?
You know, the feedback from the operators that have been able to use the machine, and their municipalities bringing it in, they've actually they were really surprised. They thought they were getting on a 400 model series fossil fuel model. Outside of the noise, they were pleasantly surprised the performance. To give you an example, I did a product showcase in North Bay, Ontario. I think it was about a year ago we did that, Scott, and for the one day, I did 23 to 25 resurfacings and had the operators that were there at the showcase on the machine. And every roughly 4 to 5 resurfacings, I would be plugging it in, letting it charge up, and away we went again. So very user-friendly. The BMI, the battery maintenance indicator, showing the operator what their charge is at percentage-wise. We even took it from color graphic, green being from 100% to about 71%, and then from 70% down to, I believe it's about 57%, that color will turn to orange. And then once it hits about 27%, that color on the graph will turn to red. And that's an indication right away for the operators to be plugging it in if they're busy and they forgot to plug it in. So we have a visual for them as well, which the operators that have been using the machine find very user-friendly as well. But the biggest response so far from operators, I was out in Edmonton at the West Edmonton Mall. If folks in the States are familiar with that. It's like the Mall of America in Minnesota. They have an ice rink in their facility, and people in the mall standing around the rink they didn't think the machine was actually running until the machine got close enough to them. So in that environment, it was certainly very friendly to the participants involved.
That's awesome. Scott, do you have anything else that you want to add before we move on to another slide?
I was just going to say, I know this time, if things were what they were there last year, we'd be doing our IMEO courses, and part of that is the circle check. With these electric machines, and especially with the enclosed batteries of a lithium-ion machine, the circle check is far less complicated than it was. There's no engine oil, there's no coolant. You don't have to check your belts to see if they're going to fray, or any of the connections of the motor itself. Just hydraulic lines in these machines, And that'll free up a lot more time for you to focus on the back end of the machine, the conditioner, making sure things are greased there. So for terms of operators' daily use and starting their circle check at the beginning of their shift, this machine really has a lot to offer, and lithium-ion does as well.
That's awesome. We're going to change directions a little bit here and talk a little bit about the 552 and how it's been adapted to the LI. The 552 is celebrating 30 years, which is hard for me to believe because I've been here for all 30 of those years and then a few more on top of it. The 552 was tested out in 2019 in a couple different locations with a lithium-ion battery pack. It was received very well in both those locations. And with that, we could see that there was going to be a demand for lithium-ion in the marketplace to work in conjunction with lead acid, possibly replace it. We still offer both, and we've still had some customers that have opted to stick with the traditional lead acid, but it is something that I'm doing my best to try to push people the direction of lithium-ion. It is truly what I believe to be a game changer for our customers, in that it completely eliminates the maintenance aspect of it. We've got some in the field. We shipped out, I believe, 4 machines prior to having to deal with the CV situation. And we've got numerous machines that are on the schedule to be produced with the lithium-ion battery pack going forward. And we're excited about where that's going to take us. A couple of the reasons to consider lithium-ion versus lead acid, and taking a look at a side-by-side pic here. The picture on the left showing the lithium-ion is in a 450. The lead acid picture is depicted in a 552. It does reduce the weight somewhat, which for people that are in facilities where they might have tight turns and have purchased the viscous coupling option on the machine on a standard 552 with lead acid battery, it's not something that you're going to necessarily need to have going forward. The same thing goes with a watering system. For those of you who have opted for a watering system, and those aren't inexpensive, it's something that you'll be able to do without. And those two features help reduce the cost adder for going with lithium-ion. So it's something, if you've worked with lead acid batteries in your building, you know that battery maintenance is an issue. It's somewhat time consuming, and if it's not done properly, can lead to a shortened life on a set of batteries. So it's something that we really feel that this is the direction that people are going to go, and the sales of it so far have proven ourselves out with that. It is zero maintenance. All that you really have to train your operators to do with this is to plug it in after every surface. This doesn't mean that the battery is going to die if you don't, but the best practice as described to us by our suppliers is use the machine, charge it up, reuse the machine. So it's a big advantage from a time standpoint with a lead acid battery. Requires you measuring different things, and watering. This, you don't have to worry about that. Here shows you a 552 with the battery connection and with the battery package in place. Very nice, clean look. One of the things that you don't have to worry about with this is corrosion. I know that that's been something that we've seen over the years when people have not watered batteries properly. It leads to overflow of acid onto the chassis of the machine. You don't have to worry about that with this. With the connection on the battery, and I don't know if people can see my mouse or not, this is something, when I went out to do an install of a machine, I was amazed at how easy it was to connect this battery to both the battery connection and to the charger connection. Made it real simple and easy for people to deal with. So this is the charger, and with that charger The dimensions of this are, believe, are 12 by 11 by 14. It's considerably smaller than that of what those of you who might have got 552 early on with a ferro-resonant type charger. It's amazing what they packed into it. This is Gen 3. This is what will be going out there. Question being asked of what's the power needs. This charger is same as the other chargers that we've had, operates on 480 three-phase power, and it has a recommended 20 amp breaker. It still comes with the 25-foot cable from the charger to the machine. At present, we have not made it available to locate the charger connection on the would-be passenger side, the right-hand side of the machine. It's available on the left-hand side standard in front of the driver. We are taking a look at that. It's not as easy of a change as it is on a lead-acid battery to relocate the connection from one side to the other due to the way the cables come out of the battery connection. So going into, again, what is recommended practice by the manufacturer of the batteries is run the machine, recharge it, and repeat. And it's really as simple as that when it comes to what you want to do with the machine and with the battery pack to get the best life out of the battery pack. Zero battery maintenance, touching on that again, it's absolutely zero. All you've got to do is plug it in and charge it up. There is a longer anticipated lifespan of this battery because we're taking the battery maintenance out of the equation, and it's ideally suited for the rink industry. I've explained this battery pack to people in that if you envision it as a 100-gallon fuel tank, as the battery ages, the capacity of that fuel tank is going to diminish. As it gets older, let's say it's down to 50% that you'll be able to fill it up to. With this, because we're running 10 to 15 minute cycles typically, you're going to be able to do that. We're in a forklift industry where they need to have the machine running for 8 hours. They're not able to do that sort of thing. So it's really taking advantage of the product that's available for us. No watering, no testing of open circuit voltage, and no testing of specific gravity. I don't know how many facilities I've been to and walked in and said, okay guys, let's talk about battery maintenance and how you're doing. Where's your logbook? I know that Ice Rink Association is big on logging and detailing information. Unfortunately, a lot of cases in our world, based on turnover of staff, that you may not have somebody that takes proper care and records that information. With the lithium-ion, you don't have to worry about that. Longer anticipated lifespan, again, because of people not taking proper care of the batteries, you don't have to worry about that anymore. It's eliminated. So we should hopefully see a longer lifespan. What that will be, not quite sure at this point in time. We're hoping to see, you know, in the 8 to 10 year lifespan out of a set of batteries. We'll know that 10 years down the road or 5 years down the road as the batteries age and the machines have been in the field for a longer period of time. Again, this battery package is ideally suited for the rink industry. It's a short runtime, recharge, and then we are going to use the machine again. So a few of the questions that that we had for this were, what is the kWh time, I believe, and maybe Marty, I can throw that over to you to give your experience and the numbers that you guys have calculated up in Canada on the 450.
Yeah, based on the 450, we've recognized it works out to 2.4 cents a kilowatt hour. So based on a 10-minute flood, you're under 24 cents. If you were to compare that to an LPG system, you're roughly at around $5 per flood. So there is a significant difference on the kilowatt hour usage compared to your traditional LPG machine.
Okay, thank you, Marty. Trying to go through notes here and see what's going on. I apologize for the the delay here. Can the lithium-ion support fast ice and other options? Yes, it can. As a matter of fact, at the one rink that I was at in New Mexico, they got fast ice on their machine, and they were very happy. I was ecstatic when I left there after spending a few days with the customer as to how well not only the machine performed, but how well the fast ice was performing for them. So got another question. Is it possible to convert a 552 DC to AC? That is not possible at this point in time. And the LI package right now is available only for AC machines. It is something that is on the drawing board that we are considering to do, but that's going to take us down the road a little bit before that happens again. So we're to the question point here. I'm trying to take a look and see, does 552 have a bigger battery versus the 450? Yes, it does. And it does equate to more resurfacings. But again, from a standpoint of capacity for the batteries, it's not something that we feel that should be a concern for customers. We're looking at this in that if you go out and operate the machine for 10 to 15 minutes, it's going to take you 15 to 20 minutes to recharge the batteries. And at that point in time, there's not as big a concern about the capacity like it would be on a lead acid where you're using a conventional charger, and that charger is something that that would be not conducive to opportunity charging. It's really not opportunity charging with the LI package. It's best practice to run the machine, charge it, and reuse the machine. There's another question. Will these be available on a 650? I am going to throw that over to the Canadian boys and let them answer that question.
I'm going to let Scott Douglas answer that question. Take it away, Scott.
I think right now, if a full-size machine is going to be lithium-ion, it will be the 552 ACLI. The 650 has not yet been decided on at this point.
Yeah. There's thank you, Scott. And I think that it has to do with configuration of the battery space. I'm not quite sure, but at present, it's in the 552. It's available in the 450. There's a question here that came in. Do you see fossil fuel machines, either gas, LPG, or CNG, disappearing? Yes and no, I guess. In some marketplaces, yes. For those of you who don't know me, I grew up in Minnesota and been gone from there for 33 years. It's hard to believe. That marketplace is predominantly gone all electric. And I think that in the New England marketplace, you're primarily seeing only electric machines purchased there. Scott, Marty, you can elaborate a little bit on what Canada is doing. I know Quebec has been a big marketplace, and as has BC.
Yeah, as Scott alluded to earlier, involved with the tenders that come in specifically from the Ontario market. I can speak in the last 4 years that Ontario specifically was an 85%, 15%, if you will, fossil to electric. And we're seeing a big curve now. We're seeing a huge change. As Scott indicated, pretty much every tender that's coming in is requesting a pricing on our lithium-ion. And we actually have some major centers in the province and across the country that are switching over to lithium-ion or electric version within their whole full fleet department, not just ice resurfacers. So there's a change coming, definitely.
Is Charles able to pipe in on how Quebec is doing, or is he not available? Okay.
Yeah, I'm available.
Sorry. Oh, great. Thank you, Charles. Maybe you can elaborate a bit as to how successful the electric machines have been in Quebec, because I believe Quebec has probably got the most electric machines in any province in Canada.
Well, for the past 20 years, at least, we've been using all electric, and all 98% of tenders for the past at least 10 years are electric. So this year, if we take a look at what we've sold, is a handful of fossil fuel. The rest has been electric. Lithium-ion is a big game changer for us on a 450, smaller model, 3-on-3s. So a lot of people are using it and want to try it out. So it's a very good market for us.
Great.
And Charles, if I can just step in, I believe the Bell Center, the Forum, formerly the Forum.
Yeah.
If you can speak to that.
Well, the Bell Center has been using 552s. They had DC machine. Now they switched to AC machine. So they've been using it for quite a while now, and no problems whatsoever. There's no problem with losing power on it. It is a full-blown machine, and it's very heavy, so very powerful.
Great. Thank you. One of the questions is, if you start charging the battery and you have to, for some reason, you have to go out and do a quick resurface and it's not done with the charging process, what is done? And that's just no different than standard lead acid. You just make sure you hit the stop button on the charger. And that's something that I instruct people, no matter what, with their operators. It's a good practice to get into, to always push the stop button on the charger. You never want to disconnect the batteries when the charger is running for fear of potential arcing. And if people get into the practice of doing that, it makes it really easy. So it's not a problem. It's just kind of similar to if you had a CNG machine and you had the hose going in, and you just unplug it and away you go. Continuous runtime for doing ice maintenance on the 552. We are advertising that it has the same capacity as far as number of resurfacings that an electric with a lead acid can do. Marty, Scott, maybe you can offer your input on what situations you've run into and how people have dealt with it with a 450.
We haven't had enough experience out there when it comes to taking out the ice, but for ice maintenance, depending on the battery pack size, you have the 4 Series 2 parallel and you have the 4 Series 3 parallel. The difference between the two of them, without charging on the 2 Series parallel, you can roughly get 3 to 5 floods. So calculate that in minutes, is roughly anywhere from half an hour to 50 minutes of runtime. On the 3 Series parallel, you can get roughly 7 to 9 floods without having to plug the machine in, which is equal to a 10-minute flood or 70 to 90 minutes before you're plugging it in. So based on what you're doing as far as ice maintenance, crosscuts, figure eights, you can be able to determine how much time are you needed for ice maintenance and how much time is required to charge, and calculate accordingly.
That's awesome. That's awesome. One of the questions that just came in is, with the success of LI technology, will we eventually stop producing lead acid machines? Part of my shtick to people is, if I could predict the future, I'd be in Vegas betting red, green, or black. I can't even predict the future that there might not be some new battery technology that comes down the road for us that might be utilized. I would say that lead acid is always going to continue to be in the marketplace for electric vehicles. It might be something that people choose to use a lead acid based on cost. And there's been a few questions about cost, and we haven't touched on that. That's something that we can have individual discussions offline of this. But I see Kelly's popped in here under the screen. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit more on lead acid, lithium ion, Kelly.
Sure. I think both technologies are going to have a pretty strong life for now. There's a strong history of lead acid in the forklift and the material handling market. I think we're going to see some of that transition, like we're seeing that in our markets as well. But there's always going to be there's some industries that have infrastructure to deal with swapping lead acid batteries and that kind of thing. We don't traditionally have that. You might have one or two machines, and you're not usually swapping a lead acid machine in and out of the a lead acid battery in and out of a machine in our application. So I think there will probably be extra time for lead acid, but I think we've already seen some strong acceptance from the market with regards to LI. So that's ultimately what dictates a lot of how we do our planning long term.
Great. Thank you very much. One other question that came, what's the difference between a fuel powered machine and an electric? And percentage wise, it's generally ran in the 35%, 30 to 35%, somewhere in there, traditionally over the 30 years that the 552 has been out. Throw this to Marty or Scott if you guys have anything else that you'd like to add to the conversation.
Previously, there was a learning curve with switching from fuel to electric. And I know with the conversions we've done recently within the province of Ontario and the ones we've been able to be are part of, with lithium-ion, there's virtually no battery training. The operators know how to drive the machine. They know the back end of the conditioner. They know the grease points. But when it comes to the battery, it's something new. It involves with your gravity testing and measuring doing quite a lot of the battery with the lead acid. That's now been removed. A facility can transition almost seamlessly without any real complications. I know we did a demonstration for a municipality, and they had a 400 series that was CNG, and then they were already in the habit of plugging in their machine after every flood. So it's seamless. And then with both the larger 552 ACLI and the smaller 450, every facility now has an electric option available to them, whether it's a single pad, a double pad, quad pad, or even some of these 8 pads that are out there. The electric's there, and it's being applied to the industry.
Great. Marty, do you want to touch on anything else?
No, I think both you and Scott have covered pretty much all of it. I know that John Archibald had asked a question out here. Maybe you had answered this already, Doug. What is the current life expectancy on the ion battery under normal operations and charging? I mean, I can speak to the 450. We're saying in between 8 to 10 years, John. But again, we don't have history on that. That's based on our supplier. But definitely reach out to me and we can talk more about it.
Sure. Yeah, I think some of it has to do with trying to predict the future. It is something that I have great hopes. I know Kelly and I have discussions about this on a somewhat frequent basis about what it is. But if you want to talk to us in 4 to 6 years, we should have a better understanding as to where we're at and what they are. But I completely believe in this technology, that this is going to be a game changer for people. One of the things that I want to touch on that Scott talked about, and it was is the adapting for people. I consider myself to be a dinosaur, been in the industry for a long period of time. What I grew up with in seeing the first venture into electric vehicles was the Honda Insight. Not a very pretty vehicle, not a very good electric vehicle. Zamboni had the electric machines go back to the very first electric machine that Frank produced was for the 1960 Olympic Games in Squaw Valley, where the U.S. team, I think, took the gold medal there. That was the first venture. Then in the 70s, we produced a 550. And in 1990, the 552 came to market. So we've got a lot of experience with the electric machine. And for younger people now that are getting into the industry, I think they are more in tune with electric, whereas the older generation might feel more comfortable with a fossil fuel powered machine. And I think that if people get the opportunity to get on a machine, an electric machine, and drive it, get the experience with a lithium-ion battery package, I don't think there will be any turning back. And Scott, you're part of the young crowd coming up in the industry. maybe you can elaborate a little bit more on that and what you're seeing with your generation of people.
Yeah, when it comes to even just charging the machine with lead acid, sometimes the operational or the part-time operational staff might not have been involved in any of the battery maintenance or even the maintenance of the machine. With these zero maintenance batteries and zero maintenance motors, there's virtually nothing for them to really to monkey with almost. Just charge that machine in and they're doing exactly the same as what a full-time might be doing. That leaves more time for training on the machine, familiarization, and then understanding the back end of the machine and where the grease points are and stuff like that. So the technology that is being implemented in the machines is allowing for more time to be spent really understanding how these machines cut, how they operate, and how you can offer your best sheet of ice to your user group. So the tools are definitely there, and with technology, it might be done on an iPad now versus a hand wheel, but the purpose is still the same, and it's just leaving a good quality sheet of ice for the user groups.
That's awesome. I'm being told to wrap this up. We're in the last minute. I want to thank everybody. But last thing I want to touch on is we've been doing some podcasts. You can see on the screen, Ask the Zamboni Expert. Take a look through our website. You can get more information. We've been doing some fun interviews, and we'll probably do a podcast that's going to expand on this a little bit to get more answers to the questions that we might not have got to. Again, I want to thank everybody. Thank John. Thank Jeff for the opportunity to put this on. And we look forward to hopefully next year being able to stand in front of you person to person and answer your questions. Thank you again very much.
Doug, thanks so much to you and your team for definitely the time and effort you guys put into this session. And we look forward to having you guys back hopefully in the next month or two. We'll work out those details, but this was great. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks a lot, John and Jeff. Have a great day.
You too.
See ya.